Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City staff, and members of the public. My name is Jeff Pengelly. I serve as the Assistant Director of Community Development. And this is the item M1. This is a report regarding temporary water connection agreement between the City of Oxnard and the Mulhart family property owners. This is associated with the construction of Del Sol High School. This parcel is known as the Mulhart Ranch South property. It's at the northeast corner of Rose Avenue and Camino del Sol. You can see an aerial view of the property in the image on the right. It's outlined in red, and there is a marker indicating Del Sol High School in what is in this image a farm field on the right side as well. The image on the left shows you a little more context. It shows the assessor's parcel map of the entire property. Again, this is the corner of Rose and Camino del Sol. The subject property is highlighted in yellow, and it's according to the assessor's map, it's 11.31 acres. The 52.52 acre parcel in that image is where the Del Sol High School is being constructed. And the parcel immediately north of that, listed as 44.21 acres, that is also a Mulhart family property, but that is not the subject of this agreement. Here are some additional views of the parcel: an enlarged view on the left, a 2D view showing again the Mulhart Ranch property south. If you notice, there are multiple structures on this property, and that's one of the key issues in this discussion and one of the reasons for the agreement, and I'll explain that a little more in just a moment. The image on the right shows a virtual 3D, quasi 3D view of the property where you can see the multiple structures a little better, a little more clearly. Again, this is referred to as the Mulhart Ranch South property. For the purposes of the agreement that is the subject of this agenda item, it is also referred to in that agreement as the Mulhart Parcel 2 property. For the purposes of this presentation, I will be referring to it as the Mulhart Ranch South property. The image to the right shows a view of the property circled in red in the bottom left-hand side of that image in the context of the Del Sol High School construction project. And if you'll notice up in the top right corner of that image, the existing water well is circled in red to identify, and the piping obviously from that well to the Mulhart Ranch South property has to traverse both the new roadway, Jacinto Drive, and the Del Sol High School construction project. The new roadway, of course, is a part of that construction project, but there's no way for that construction to continue uninterrupted and work around that existing underground water line. So this Mulhart Ranch South property is served by that water well I just discussed. And as I mentioned, the grading for the Del Sol High School, it's going to necessitate the removal of that water line. And that will leave the Mulhart Ranch South property without water service. This was anticipated, however, to some extent. What wasn't anticipated was the number of dwelling units on that parcel. And I'll expand upon that in just a moment and explain why that's relevant to this item. Water pumping allocations have been transferred by the Mulhart family in a manner that should provide sufficient coverage for both the Del Sol High School and the Mulhart Ranch South properties. And a city water connection to that Mulhart Ranch South property would occur off of Camino del Sol, which is where the water service will eventually be for the Del Sol High School as well. Because that water line needs to be removed, this agreement helps facilitate the construction of the high school project It allows for a temporary city water service connection to this Mulhart Ranch South property, and that will allow the grading operations to continue without delays and without an interruption in water service to the Mulhart Ranch South dwelling units. This existing water line serves what we believe is 5 dwelling units, including the historic Mulhart Ranch house. And as I've stated already, this needs to be removed so as not to delay the Del Sol High School grading operations. Plans have been submitted and are nearing approval for the water connection from Camino del Sol that would branch off towards the Mulhart Ranch South property. However, as I mentioned, what wasn't anticipated, unfortunately, was the city code requirement that the 5 dwelling units on that property each must have a separate water service and separate water meter. This would require up to 5 water meters be installed instead of a single larger meter, which is what is the Mulhart property owners are proposing. And in addition to 5 meters, there would be hundreds of feet, and in fact, as I reflect on it, literally multiple thousands of feet of underground water lines would need to be installed on the Mulhart Ranch South property, providing a direct connection from each of the city code required meters to each individual detached dwelling unit. What this agreement does, it would allow for a single larger water meter to be installed that would serve all of the on-site dwelling units. And that larger water meter would tap into the existing incoming water line within the boundaries of this Mulhart Ranch South parcel, and have therefore one point of connection, and then utilize all the existing on-site water infrastructure from that point towards the dwelling units. This would minimize, obviously, on-site piping, but this would also reduce the number of service connections to the city main, and the city would have to maintain all the piping between those multiple water meters and those connections to the city main. So by having one point of connection and one large meter, there's a benefit for city maintenance as well. Again, this agreement is necessary because the Oxnard City Code requires a separate water service and meter for each detached dwelling unit. Thus, it requires City Council approval to deviate. But this agreement is temporary in nature. It has a term of 5 years, but there is an allowance for an extension of an additional 5 years for a 10-year maximum. The agreement is set to expire most likely well before the end of that term, because the agreement stipulates that if the property is sold or conveyed to a third party, or if the property is developed or subdivided, the agreement would terminate. And to date, the Mulhart Ranch property owners have submitted a tract map application and a specific plan amendment application for the development of this parcel and the other remaining parcel north of the high school. So if everything goes per plan, this temporary connection will not be required for anything on the order of 5 or 10 years, but those timeframes were put in as a buffer for unforeseen economic or other factors that may unknowingly delay the development of that property. Staff's recommendation for this agenda item is that the City Council approve and authorize the city manager to execute the attached agreement, which would allow for a single water service connection and meter to the Mulhart Ranch South parcel for a limited duration of time as stipulated in the agreement. That concludes this presentation. I will be available for any questions. Thank you.